happens in Door County stays in Door County. So, we are at Romans chapter 12. We got through the section that would be titled Gifts of Grace in the ESV. So that would have got us through the 8th verse. I believe we got all. Did we get all the way through that? I'm pretty sure. Or pretty close. Yeah, exhorts. The ones who lead with zeal. Okay, all right, good. So, now we are at the 9th verse, and remember, these are still, as Paul is talking here, he is still speaking about the characteristics of a Christian, or how our faith is displayed. These are not to be looked at as works righteous. They're to be looked at as fruits of faith, because that was what all of Romans has been about, is to get that out of the head of the church that they can do anything to earn salvation. And so, but as he went through all of those chapters, now he's continuing to tell us what it looks like in the life of the Christian, and in this first section, especially chapter 12, really what it looks like through the light of the church, so what our relationship with other believers. Which be the same as saying our relationship with the church. See, we get hung up, I think, so often when we talk about the church to think that we just mean our church. You understand? Or we might, even if we can expand past that, where we're thinking just about our church, we're thinking about our church body, or as Lutherans. You know what I mean? And so when we talk about church, whenever the Bible speaks about church, it is speaking about all believers. So here in Romans, he is speaking about how we interact with other Christians, and it's going to be. It might be a little different in some cases than it is with non-Christians, and we may associate in different ways. You might talk a little different, speak a little different with someone that is a member of the church. There might be a little more, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, exhortation. Rather than with a member of the church who knows God's word and what God says, we might respond a little different to them than we do with people that don't know His word. Where there we might speak a little more gentle than we do with the Christian. That type of thing. So there's a number of different things as we take a look at this. So why don't we start with, and we'll just work our way through this, 9 through 13. If somebody wants to read that.
Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality.
Okay. All right, so here we see some of the characteristics. Let love be genuine. And this is... What does he mean by letting love be genuine?
Just like it says.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what would if love wasn't genuine, what might it look like?
Sarcastic.
Okay.
Or it just would feel like an obligation?
That's a great, yeah, it would be, we'd be doing it for the standpoint of obligation, or we would show love, I would show love to Claudia for what reason?
To get
Just to look
something.
good?
Yeah, for her to show love back. Right, for me to get something back. Yeah. So what does it mean when he talks about sincere love? He is speaking about an unconditional love. Love Claudia because she's God's child. Because you see what I mean? That type of thing. Abhor what is evil. Abhor what is evil and hold fast to what is good. And that is very challenging, isn't it? Some may not think it is, but for others it might be more so. Abhorring what would be evil. When you take a look at some of the stuff that is on television today, some of the stuff we probably shouldn't be watching, but you just love to watch it anyways. And I have lots of those types of. The temptation for that is great, and yet, the mark of a true Christian would be to walk away from that. So that is the temptation that is always facing the Christian, but also it would not just be in something like that. It might be abhorring what is evil, might be places that you would gather or people you would gather with. You might begin to separate yourself from those types of wrong behavior. That type of thing. And especially in the church, especially with other, and as this is speaking, with other Christians. See, this is the other piece of it, is, some of the only places that you would be able to meet non-Christians might be in places of questionable standards. But where are you going to get a chance to meet some of them, But when it comes to the church, does that mean that with your brothers and sisters in the church that you go and intentionally gather in places that are maybe of less standards according to God's standards? And so those would be some of the thoughts that he's looking at. It seems so obvious, right? But as obvious as it is, it must have been an issue for the Roman church, and it certainly is still an issue with us today. And so as obvious as it seems, it holds true for us. Love one another with brotherly affection. So now we're talking here, now we're not even talking an agape or an unconditional love. Now we're talking about a brotherly kind of love. Loving what would be a brotherly affection. What might be a brotherly affection of love? Give maybe some examples of that. Yeah, treat them like family, which some of the things of treating like family might mean something as simple as, and we'll see it here in church, it might be as we see one of our seniors coming up the stairs that they have trouble with stairs, or they have a walker with them, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you're there to, maybe one is carrying a walker up for them so they can get up the stair. Maybe another one is standing behind them in case they lose a balance a little bit. You know what I mean? Those would be ways of showing brotherly affection and care. You would, if that was your mom or dad going up those stairs, you would just naturally do that, I would hope. But what about others that aren't your family? And as we look at the church, we're reminded that we are all brothers and sisters in Christ. The Scripture speaks very much like that. So we are a true family of faith, and so we treat people as such. Outdo one another in showing honor. That would be, I think that that's a really interesting thing. Honor, in the NIV, it says, honor one another above yourself. But in the English Standard Version, it says, outdo one another in showing honor. So if you're going to if I'm going to outdo Emily in showing honor, am I doing it to show Emily that she's not doing enough? No. What does it mean when we say outdo someone in?
You don't wait for them to do it first.
Yeah, exactly. It would be like, it would be very easy, and I'm going to pick on Claudia today just because I'm tired of picking on your kids. So I'm going to pick on Claudia today. Every year since I've been here, every year Claudia is the one who kind of takes up making sure that we have meals for Advent and Lent. Okay? She just does it. She could easily have said, I've done that the last 5 years. Let someone else do it. I'll help, but let someone else, and they'll just push it off to the side. And I've heard this in churches forever. Well, I've done that. It's somebody else's turn. That type of thing. Where in the case of, and again, She doesn't think about that. It's like, I'll do it. If somebody else ever wanted to do it, she would have no problem with anyone doing it, but she's not going to say, well, I've done it enough, it's your turn now. And that's kind of what this means. And so as we take a look at what does it mean to honor others or care for others is, don't keep a scorecard type of thing. That's what it means by outdoing one another. Don't be slothful in zeal. Here it says, never be lacking in zeal. And I think that word is a little weak to the original language. Do not be slothful in zeal. What is slothful?
About the least amount of energy as possible.
There you go. Lazy. There is a, laziness is that's sinfulness. That is not caring for, and you can take a look at your laziness in worship. Third commandment. Laziness in our language, that's second commandment. Laziness in our care for others, that's fourth commandment. You see what I mean? It fits in all of the commandments. Being lazy in your zeal. What would they mean by that? What would be the zeal? Being lazy in zeal. Okay, the zeal. So, what will be the zeal as far as the church? Zeal. I think we can use other words for it. We could look at the word passion. I think could be used for that. Tenacity could be another word for that. Persistence could be another word for that. Where do we see a lack of zeal for people? In people when it comes to the church? Where would be a obvious example? Going to church. Yeah. I have something that I'm doing in church or leading in church, and so I am there and I'm very regular, and then all of a sudden when I don't have that anymore, it's gone. Or I have the zeal. I have this that, okay, we're going to church. It's Christmas and it's Easter, but then the week after Christmas or the week after Easter, it's gone. I'll never forget my very first parish had a woman who are her daughter. They were there every single week of the year until you got to Memorial Day. And at Memorial Day, she said, quote, "I'll see you in September." Yeah, "I'll see you in September." So you don't come to church in summer? No. No. It was just, no. Yeah, so when you talk about the lack of zeal, being lazy in your zeal, that would be an example of laziness in zeal. Or, again, I mean, look at it as, I've done this for years and years and years, but, now it's somebody else's turn. And I'm just going to sit back and not do it. And it's different as somebody ages and maybe can't do the things that they used to be able to do. That's a different story. But the other one is just when you start talking about a lack of commitment. That is something he is saying here. Don't be slothful. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Fervent in spirit. Again, tenacious, persistent. Have a hunger. Jesus used it in a beatitude, right? Well, blessed are those who have a hunger and thirst for righteousness. That's hunger and thirst would be another term for persistence, or have a tenacity for, so for the antithesis of that, or would be, what's the opposite? Antonym? Is that antonym? Okay, antonym. The antonym of that would be, or an example would be you guys. As you gather here each and every week to dive in word for word into God's word. That's showing that's being fervent in spirit. So that's a great example of fervent spirit. And serve the Lord. How do we serve the Lord? By loving Him and by loving your neighbor as yourself. That's how we serve the Lord. And each one of us has different ways of doing it. Rejoice in hope, right? So we are rejoice in that hope, that the promise that is coming, being patient in tribulation, and being constant in prayer. So here we know that the joy that is set before us is going to be is an eternal joy that is coming, and so we rejoice in that. We look forward to, Pam looks forward to reuniting with those that have gone before her. She looks forward to that. That is what it means by rejoicing in that hope. God promised. She's rejoicing in it. But at the same time that you're rejoicing in it, we need to be patient during those times of struggle and trial, right? And so we're not impatient with God when He doesn't answer, when we're in the midst of a long battle. Anybody that's ever been had a struggle with unemployment or with financial struggles, a family financial struggle, do they usually answer that quickly? No, some of them can take years and years and years to go from under. And so it's having patience during those kinds of times. Well, the same thing happens here in the church. There's being patient. I was talking with a pastor friend yesterday. I had called him, and I hadn't seen him since before COVID. And he accepted a call in Minnesota, and he received the call after that congregation had been without a pastor for 4 years. 4 years. They were without a pastor. Now think about having patience in tribulation. Being a church without a pastor for 4 years. How easy would it be to have given up? I know of another church in another part of our state that has had 7 calls returned. So they've called 7 pastors, and they haven't had a pastor take the call yet. you know? And so having patience, endurance in the midst of that. That's what he's talking about here. Being constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. See, here he's talking about believers, right? To the church, right? And seek to show hospitality. And so that is, and however that hospitality takes on its form. It's wonderful. We have this Thanksgiving meal that is here. And it originally started out with just one family is going to kind of do all the work and just invite everybody else. But on the day of on the day of that Thanksgiving, you should see all the hands of hospitality that are getting the place ready for others and then welcoming others. And then the next year, all of a sudden, those people that were just there on that day to help set up, now they're picking up other things and they're getting it ready a week or two in advance. And there's multiple families now that are doing the work of that. This is what it means to show hospitality. Okay. Let's go from 14 now through the end of the chapter. Let's just read the whole thing. Anybody?
Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Okay. It's tiring being a Christian, isn't it? Especially if people get on your nerves, you know? Look at how we are to treat brothers and sisters in the faith. You know, even the ones that drive you nuts, even the ones that make you shake your head sometime. And we all know those, right? We all have people in those ways, and yet we view them different. And why do we view them different?
Because they are different.
Okay, yeah. So we love diversity. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely. Why this? Their fellow, yeah. This is how Jesus treated those that think about this. Bless those who persecute you. Give me an example of when Jesus blessed those who persecuted him.
Father, forgive them, for they know not
What they, okay, absolutely. They're nailing him to a cross. They did. His disciples denied him. They ran away from him. They accused him of blasphemy. They accused him of being blasphemous against God, the very God himself, and they nailed him to a cross, and he said, "Forgive them, Father. Bless and do not curse them." And so so if Jesus can, and also look at that, who else persecuted Jesus?
his own, from
Okay.
Nazareth, his own village.
Okay, all right. I'm waiting for somebody to give me one word. Me. I persecuted him. It is my sins that put him on a cross. We've talked about that before. Would Jesus have gone to the cross for one sinner's sins? Yes. That means he would have gone to the cross just for me. And so I persecuted him, and he blessed me. He blessed me with a gift of faith. He led my parents to bring me to the waters of holy baptism, and then he never left me. And he never forsook me in the midst of all of that. And so, and if Jesus can do that for me, I ought to be able to love people that maybe make me shake my head, or that maybe get on your nerves at times, or not just people that are in your court, but maybe the people that are speaking a little against you, that type of thing. Yeah. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, live in harmony with one another. It reminds you of Paul's words, right? That he wants to be all things to all people. And so, for those that are joy-filled, don't burst their balloon. Rejoice with them. When Claudia shows us pictures of the nieces and nephews, celebrate with her regarding that. When the Morgansons family is experiencing some health-related things in their, cancers and blood transfusions and bone marrow transplants and all that, weep with them. Don't leave them to weep on their own. Be part of the family that surrounds them and surrounds those that are with them. You see, this is what he is talking about. Live in harmony with one another. That is a church divided is a very dangerous place. And so that is one thing that you can see here at Berea. And it didn't take me 10 years to see it. You see it right away. Is people living in harmony with each other. Not just Sunday morning people living in harmony with Sunday morning people, right? I mean, we think about what we have. We have people that gather in there. We have people that gather in here a couple times a week. We have people that gather at Luther Manor. We have people of another language that gather together here. And no one speaks a word out of place with any of them. Everybody gets along. We may not know each other as well as we should. I mean, there's probably things in here that we could be doing a whole lot better. But we are a church that is truly in harmony with each other. We get along. You have the most milquetoast voter or congregational meetings I've ever been a part of. You really do. You get along, and I don't think it's because people are disinterested. You get along. And there might even be things that you don't agree with, and so people they'll ask a question, but they don't stand up and say, "What the bleep are you doing?" And you say, "Well, that would never happen in a church." Happens all the time in churches. And they are a divided church and school, divided church and church council, divided, first service and second service. There's all of that. Berea, there's none of that. No, absolutely none. You talk about living in harmony, this would be a church that does just that. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. That's another thing that we see here as a wonderful characteristic of the church in this place. Is there's no one that you don't see people that are seeking recognition for themselves. We see people. I watch individuals that came to church on their own, that they see somebody else that's walking to church now, and now they go out of their way to go pick them up and go take them home. And it happens not just here, but it happens in our other church services. We see it all. We see those kinds of things going on. We see people that are constantly associating. I mean, when you talk about being haughty but associate with the lowly, think about the president of our congregation who opened up his not just the church that he is caring for, but himself to a man in our parking lot for a year and a half. Who didn't just say, well, you can hang out there, just don't get in the way, but spend time with him. And when he could no longer be in our parking lot, helped him move to his new place. You see what I mean? This is what the church does, right? Never be wise in your own sight. Yeah.
In light of the immigration and the illegal immigrants all
Mhm.
coming in, how do you see that? How could we make it easier for them? Or what stand do we take as a church? Or should we be doing?
That's a great question. And I think that it's a question that's probably more than we'll be able to deal with here today. But how many of those individuals are coming here because this is a better place to live than where they were? Now, just because they're coming in not through the way that we set up, does that mean that we then as the church would ignore them? Or do we welcome those that are hungry and homeless? Are we inviting to them? I think we have to take a look at. We also have to be reminded that they are also people that Christ died for.
Right.
And so when you look at individuals as another person Christ died for, you're going to look at that individual different. And I don't care if it is someone that has broken a law or someone that is a believer or unbeliever, or someone that is of higher or lower estate than you. If you look at them as someone that Christ died for, you will respond to them in a different way than you would if you look at them through any other lens. Okay?
Do we have any in Wisconsin that need us?
I'm sure there probably are. I'm not aware of any, but I'm sure there are. I would think that our church, I would think that our state is not immune
Right.
to that. Yeah.
But
We have a northern border. How many are coming through on the northern border? You know? So I think that there certainly that that each, and again, you can look at it from the standpoint of what should the church do. This is not speaking about what should the church do. This is speaking about what do you do.
right.
How do you respond to these types of things? You know.
We wait until it comes into our.
That's a good question. I don't know.
With the Missouri Synod, does it have any directives?
Not that I've known of any. I don't know of anything right now.
There must be congregations that are dealing with this.
There probably are. I'm not aware of them.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. There probably are. I just don't know who they are. So we have not. I mean, our church body has not made any formal statements. Anything, we haven't really heard many stories yet. Those will come over in time. We'll start to hear some of those stories. And then what that does is that will typically spark in a church, okay, well, this might be what I could do. Sometimes that's what you need, is you need to hear those kind of stories. You need to hear what others are doing. I haven't heard of any of that yet by us. So, never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, right? but give thought to what is honorable in the sight of all. I think that is certainly an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth kind of thing. That is not what a Christian does. In fact, we're going to see a little bit later as we talk about authority and the respect that we have for authority, because they're the ones that God has given the sword to repay evil, for to punish evildoers and that. And our responsibility there, but it is not our responsibility. So that we don't be, as a Christian, you don't become a vigilante kind of thing. That type of, okay? If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. I think that is very interesting. So far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. So, can you kind of paraphrase what you believe that means?
I feel like God has put me at Lutheran Manor for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a reason for everything that He gives me.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's so many personalities there.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you walk, it's a delicate situation. And I try to stand back and observe rather than get involved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the best or not, but I think it is.
Okay. It's probably wise. That would certainly be a wise way of looking at it. What is it? How else would you look at as far as it depends on you? Live peaceably with all.
Well, it means, sometimes it might not be possible to be at peace with everyone. Maybe some things are out of your control, but
Right.
you want to try your best.
Right, and if they're out, and obviously if they're out of your control, or it's not. Also, it's not. Well, you group, you church, you others, you need to live peaceably with. So it's what do I do? As far as it depends on me, what can I do to live at peace with someone else? In the midst, and it's not always the case. There are going to be times when you get one of my favorite movies. I love this movie, Gran Torino. Familiar with the movie, right? And Walt Kowalski. You guys love Walt Kowalski. Was the Clint Eastwood character. And Walt Kowalski, and you talk about someone living peaceably with others. And he had people move in next to him that were not like him. And he was a cranky old miserable man. He was a cranky old miserable man. Part of it was because his kids didn't like him. And so he pretty much could have cared less about them, because that's how they treated each other. His wife had passed away, so the one person that he loved was no longer there, and he was diagnosed with cancer. And here's these people that move in next door that are not like him at all. In fact, they were among family, if you've never seen the movie, among family. And you watch in this movie, as far as someone living when you talk about being peaceable, as it depends on you. The characters, you see the characters in the movie, even though one tried to commit a crime against the other, and you saw them living peaceably with each other. You saw the characters begin to, in essence, Walt mentoring the young kids from the family, and the other family embracing him. And then in the end of the movie, of course, what you see is him defending their life by the giving up of his own life in the movie, but you watched people who could have just as easily been antagonistic with each other all the time, finding ways as it depended on them with their own characteristics and their own who they are, living peaceably with each other. And that is what it is saying here. Never avenge yourselves. Never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. Again, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, right? That's what he says here. To the contrary, this is how you take a look at that who you would see as your enemy. Is if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. And why? And why do you do that? One, because it's the right thing to do. Always. And that is something that we do with anything that we do here at Berea Lutheran Church, and what we should do in our own lives is you ask the question, what is the right thing to do? And then you do it. And whether the right thing is easy or hard, whether it's cheap or expensive, it doesn't make a difference. You do the right thing. And so, but what happens here is what Paul is saying is there's implications to everything that we do. Right? And so those implications can be good, they can be not so good. I don't want to call it a consequence, it's an implication in this case. One of the implications is if there's someone that sees himself as your enemy and you are his enemy, and you feed him and you give him something to drink, and these are just examples of, the point is you care for him. You take care of him or her. It says it's going to heap burning coals on his head. What would be another a way of saying that would be is that is going to definitely affect his conscience. It's good. When you are kind to someone who is your enemy, you're going to drive them crazy. They're going to understand why. They want you to be mad at them because they want to be in an antagonistic relationship. And by you doing this, that's living in peace according to your own self, how it depends on you. And it's going to affect his conscience. Or it ought to affect his conscience, unless his heart is totally hardened. It will affect his conscience. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And so, again, this is what it looks like to be a Christian. And we don't do these things to earn God's favor. We don't do them to earn salvation, is what Paul is saying. He's saying that Peter told us what? He said that we are living stones. We are the temple of God. Because God, we talked about this today, because God dwells in you, it means you are salt and you are light. If God dwells in you, it means that the characteristics of how Christ lived and dealt with those that were his brothers and sisters, those that believed, those that were his enemies, those that were in authority over him, we ought to respond in the same way. Because he has done this, and he's done this for us, and because of that, we can then respond to the world in a different way. So we can respond to those who are unlovable. I use the term with married couples when I speak of a sermon or a message during a wedding, and I will speak about loving someone when they are unlovable. And there are plenty of times when even the Christian, your brothers and sisters, can be unlovable. And yet we love them in this way. not because we're expecting them to love us back. This is how we respond to them. And so that is what he means by you being a living sacrifice. You are a painting of what the church looks like. You are an image of what the Holy Christian Church is. I mean, you're still on this side of heaven, and so it is still infused with sin and the sin, death, your own sinful flesh, all of those kind of things. But it doesn't mean that we don't look at someone differently. We look at them as someone that is a baptized child of God, or as in the case of a believer, so as a child of God, as one who Jesus suffered and died for. And so the following chapters, he's going to take a look at authority. He's going to take a look at others that are outside of the church as we get now into chapter 13. So go in peace, serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. And I got to get some doors